Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Sean and Sax show. Podcast, show, episode, adventure. What is this, number 8?
Number 8.
Number 8. That's 2 months. That's one per week.
Babe.
That's 2 months.
We're so consistent, too.
Congratulations, babe, on our 8th episode.
Thanks, love.
Guys, welcome to the show. We are grateful that you're here. We're grateful that you have tuned in. We just crossed 72,000 or 74. Bryce, 74. 74,500 downloads that was with 6 episodes or 7 episodes.
No,
that was 7 episodes. So, guys, seriously, super, super, super humbled.
Thanks for liking us.
Thanks for liking us. Thanks for liking the podcast. It is great, though. It's like, you got to do shit that scares you, man. Like, we talk about this all the time. If you follow me, if you follow Sax, like, we're always talking about this. But, like, this is something that is scary in a way. Like,
every time we sit down, it's scary.
We talk about this every single time, and not to beat a dead horse, because whatever, but, like, it's scary when you sit down and you have open conversations about relationships. Is that your phone, babe? Do you want to shut your phone off, dear? For the love of God. Can we be somewhat professional around here? We gotta be professional.
Okay, carry on.
Sorry, that was Saxony's
carry on.
Anyways, it is. You got to do scary shit, man. You got to do scary shit in pretty much everything that you do in order to level up, in order to grow.
Absolutely.
And doing a podcast with you has been a level up, and it's getting more and more and more fun, more and more exciting. More and more fancy. Yeah, we're getting.
You guys should see the set. We have new lights.
It's officially turning into like a real set, which is cool. We got lights, we got cameras, we got all kinds of shenanigans. So
this is a glow up for sure.
We were gonna do it today, but one of our friends' wives couldn't make it. She couldn't catch the flight. Anyways, we're gonna start having people on, and I'm really excited about it. We were super stoked.
Yes.
It's a bummer that Casey couldn't make it, Casey Fleischman. But we're going to start having couples on and other people and having kind of, I don't want to say interviews or conversations and other stuff. So I'm really, really, really pumped for that.
I am too.
Imagine being able to sit down like your friends. We don't want them to listen because then they'll get all scared. So don't listen to this part. If you're a couple and you want to be on the podcast, don't listen right now. But like being able to sit down with some rad people and like have really, really, really raw, open conversations about their relationship. You know what I mean? Like
just life.
Oh, dude, it would be like so fun to have like Andy and Emily. We got to get Andy out of his cave to come.
We'll just go
the
see
podcast. Them. Yeah, we'll just show up.
Go knock on the door.
Like, hey, let's talk about sex and relationships and all of that stuff. Anyways, we're gonna have people on. It's gonna be fun. So, guys, welcome. We wanted to share something pretty specific today, and it's been something that's been on our plate, and we've been talking about. It came up again last night. We were at a dinner with a bunch of friends. We went to this $1,000 dinner. Maybe you've seen us doing the $100 dinner where a bunch of my buddies and I and all of our friends have gotten together and started to catch on. And people are doing this all over the world literally now is doing a $100 dinner where you get a bunch of your friends together. Everybody throws in $100 and then you give all that money to the servers as a tip. Last night we did the first $1,000 dinner. So there was 15 of us. And then we had a couple people donate. So we had almost $16,000 total that went to a tip for the servers. That was our first one, and it was really, really, really cool. But the reason I'm sharing that is because while we were there, towards the end of the evening, we were having a conversation with a couple of buddies, the owner of the restaurant and another friend, and the conversation of Jordans came up. And the 3 of us are all kind of sneakerhead fans now, and we all have Jordans and stuff. But we started sharing our stories around Jordans and how we got into the sneakers and the whole thing. And that kind of sparked the conversation of what we wanted to talk about on the podcast today. And the show today was about stories and about rewriting stories. And it sounds really, really simple. But I have come to realize how difficult it is when you have ego and pride and arrogance and fear and resentment.
And lots of shame.
And all of these other things to rewrite stories. And so what we wanted to talk about first is like what they are, like what a lot of these stories are for me and for you, and share some of our personal stories, but how Saxony and I have not only rewritten stories individually, because I have a fuck ton of stories that I have been addicted to, that I have been telling myself for literally 30 years, and how we have rewritten stories together as a couple, which both having been divorced, both having been married, both having been down the path of being lied to, cheated on, lying, being insecure, having a lot of issues. We have a lot of fucking stories. The truth is, you and I do, but I think a lot of human beings have a lot of stories that they tell themselves.
And I think a lot of people aren't even aware that they're telling them. And that's what we love about doing this podcast, is like raising the awareness to the stories, so that way you can heal and redirect the course of your life.
Yeah, rewrite them.
Yeah.
Like, call it healing, calling it rewriting them. That's what's really dope about this conversation is, you know, we get stuck in whether you call it addiction, whether you want to call it, reliance on something. The truth is you can rewrite anything. And yeah, you might have been here, you might have been there, you might have had this experience or that experience, but you can literally rewrite the entire narrative and write a completely new story. And as we were talking about this last night, like one of the major, and I share this simply because this has been probably the biggest story that I've rewritten, and was in essence the first domino of dominoes that have fallen for me over the last year, was the story about Jordans.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know it, I'll share it with you quickly. But, you know, I grew up with two working parents. Then my parents split. My mom was a single mom. And Jordans came out when I was a kid, and they were $100. And it was like the first $100 shoe. And if you were a kid in elementary school, you were the shit when you showed up on day one. Everybody shows up with the new shoes and the new pants and the new shirt and the new backpack. And you got all your fresh gear on and everything's clear. But, like, if you had the Jordans back in the day, you were the shit. Well, I would go to Foot Locker every single fall, beginning of school. Mom and dad would say, you got, $30 budget, whatever, get your shoes. And I was hell-bent that I was going to get these Jordans. And I would show up and my parents would say, yeah, you can buy them, but you got to pay the difference. And so I'm like, $70, geez, that's a ton of money. And long story short, I never bought a pair of Jordans. I never owned a pair of Jordans. Now they're sneakers and they're cool. And maybe you like sneakers, maybe you don't. It doesn't really matter. Maybe you're a loafer person or fucking whatever. You wear flip-flops 24/7. But Jordans are Jordans, and they're dope. And I've always had this thing, and I've always seen them, and they're just cool sneakers, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not a basketball player. I don't wear them to play basketball. I just wear them because they're fucking cool-looking sneakers, right? Mm-hmm. Well, for literally 30 years, I told this story about how I had literally the story that I just told, I have told that story thousands of times about how, I made a lot of money and I lost a lot of money and made a lot of money and back on the grind and the hustle. And I could afford any pair of Jordans. I could afford $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 Jordans if I really wanted them, but I'd never had them before and I never bought them. And I started wearing this story as a badge of honor. Mm-hmm. Like, I've never had these Jordans and I'm never going to buy them. And like, I'm going to go to my grave with this thing. And last year, the beginning of last year, I remember this vividly. This is when we were...
it was right before Lions Den Live.
Right before Lions Den Live.
Yeah.
I remember laying in bed one night, and I'm on my phone, and I'm looking through these ads, and there's this ad from this company with this pair of Jordans. And I remember vividly laying in bed looking at these sneakers like, I could afford these $500, $600, $700 shoes. It's not the issue of money. But it's like, I want these things and I would love to wear these things. And a bunch of my friends are sneakerheads. Jason and Dan and all my buddies are big time sneakerheads, right? Far, far, far further down the path than I am. But, I like these shoes. They look cool, but I can't buy them because if I buy them, then the entire story that I've been telling is now no longer there. Yeah. I can't tell the story anymore. Mm-hmm. And so literally in my mind for 30 years, I've been saying to myself, if I buy these shoes, then I no longer am able to tell this story. And so it's really fascinating to comprehend and to think about, and that has changed my life, is I was truly addicted to a story more than I was committed to doing what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Let me repeat that. I was addicted to telling a story. I was telling a story for so long that was real. It wasn't fake. It wasn't made up. I'd never bought a pair of Jordans. I could afford the Jordans. It was a real story. But I literally wanted these shoes and wanted to buy these shoes, but didn't because the story was more important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget as long as I live, like literally clicking the buttons on my phone. Thank God for technology. Thank God for making like swipe one click purchase on Amazon, whatever. I ended up buying these shoes, and it was cool because I had this moment where I was like, oh, this is great, right? I fell asleep. Then like a week later, I get this box in the mail, and I open up these Jordans, and I got super emotional.
Yeah.
Like I got teary-eyed and got all choked up, and I'm holding these shoes, and I'm like, what did I just do? Like, I just bought these shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I had a really, really, really cool revelation and experience. I'm holding these shoes, and I have these dope Jordans, these 4s that I had always seen, that I'd always liked, that I'd always wanted. I'm now holding them. And I had this almost like epiphany where I realized I have the shoes. I now have the and I have the story.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell the same story, and I have the shoes, but now I can rewrite and write a completely new story.
Yeah.
Because I have the shoes, now I can still tell the story that for 30-something years I never had the shoes, and then one night I bought the shoes, and now I have the shoes. But what happened in that moment truly changed the course of my life. And it sounds really funny, and it sounds really trivial to maybe some of you, that a pair of sneakers literally rewrote my stories around love, my stories around my body, my stories around being a father, being a parent, being a lover, getting married again, a pair of fucking sneakers. And what I realized in that moment is that I had become literally addicted to the story, and I was so committed to telling the story that I wasn't willing to do anything different, because then I would not have the story.
Right.
And as I'm holding the shoes, I was like, holy shit, I have the shoes that I want, and I have the story.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, it was really interesting. It was almost like this reel spinning in my mind of, what other fucking stories am I telling? What other things am I committed to? Stories that I have been telling for maybe a year or 5 or 10 years about love, about connection, about relationships. What stories have I been telling myself about marriage, about getting married again, and falling in love again, and giving a woman my heart again? And in that moment, buying up these shoes, I realized, like, I have the ability literally to rewrite any fucking story that I want. And I can tell you, over the last year, I've rewritten every goddamn story I could rewrite.
Yeah.
From my self-worth to my business capacity to my earning capacity to my ability to have a relationship. I mean, literally fast forwarding now to today, in not even a year ago, I was having this experience with these Jordans, and here we are sitting here married. Well, how long have we been married now? Like
couple months.
2 months? Couple days, couple weeks.
Days.
My timeline is, she always makes fun of my timeline. But I want you guys to contemplate this for a second. Like, how many stories, ask yourself this question, how many stories are you telling that literally by a simple action of buying a pair of shoes could be rewritten?
Right.
How many stories are you telling around love that by a simple action could literally be rewritten? How many stories are you telling? How many stories are you addicted to? I'm never going to be chosen. I'm never going to be loved. I'm every guy's a cheater. Every chick's a whore. Blah. How many stories are you telling that you have been literally set, like, so rock solid behind that something as simple as maybe buying a pair of fucking sneakers could rewrite it?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, I realized how insignificant but yet significant it was to literally have a pair of sneakers rewrite something that I had been selling and committed to for 30 fucking years. 30 years I had been telling this story. 30 years I had never bought these shoes. 30 fucking years as someone who's capable of buying $1,000 pairs of shoes. I never bought it. For 30 fucking years I was telling this story and was so committed to it. And literally with the swipe of my finger on a phone and buying a pair of shoes, I rewrote a story that I had literally told thousands and thousands of times. And all of a sudden I step back, I'm like, holy shit, dude. This might become fun. This might become...
It is. Isn't it? I love that, how it becomes like, it's an addictive thing. You're like, oh, and what else can I recreate?
Right.
What else? And it's like, you realize how powerful you are.
Yeah.
You realize how powerful your decision making is and changes the course of your life so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and sometimes it's not so quickly. So I'm going to tell a story about one of mine, and mine was a bunch of small choices that led me into a whole new direction. I spent most of my young life in a lot of scarcity around money. I had a really, really very poor relationship with money. And my mom didn't have a lot of money. My dad did have a lot of money. So I had this like interesting upbringing. But me on my own, money was always a source of contention. There was always drama around money. My parents split up. There was a child support checks passed. Money was always this negative thing. I had so much scarcity attachment to it. And I truly didn't ever believe I could be financially independent. I had somewhere in my psyche, I had made up my mind that I always needed someone there to help me. Like the idea of me being independent was like terrifying. I didn't know how to I didn't know how to let go of my parents. And then I didn't know how to I just didn't know how, I truly didn't believe I could be financially independent. I was a single mom and I was on food stamps. I was, my parents helped me out a lot back then. And I was terrified. I remember looking at this little kid being like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. I can't do this. I don't have the ability to do this. But little by little, I chipped away at this idea of well, maybe if I keep making one brave decision after the other, I'll get there. But I still had this heaviness. I mean, there was a time in my life when I owed Czech City thousands of dollars in payday loans. And I remember thinking what in the hell has my life become? This is my relationship with money. I'm never ahead. I'm always behind. And it wasn't until I bought my first house, which that was really interesting because I was beyond terrified to buy a house. And I had to borrow money from my dad to even get the inspection done on the house. I had no money. I bought it with some cool grant program back in the day. But I remember I bought that house, and before I closed, I got a beer, and I sat in the house, and it was vacant. And I sat on the floor, and I talked to God, and I was like, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. I know this is part of the path to get me into this, abundant adult space that I'm supposed to be in, but I'm terrified. And I just knew, I got this reassurance is just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep moving forward. And, I got in that house and I fixed it up and I sold it and I made a little bit of cash and I rolled it into another house. And what was really interesting about this house is when the game really changed, is I bought this house and it was the biggest piece of shit. I mean, the inspector told me not to buy it, but I'm like, this is it. This is my big break. I bought this house for $174,000 and I gutted it. And my family came in and we renovated it and I worked so hard. We all worked so hard and we made this house incredible. A couple years after that, I sold it and I made more money than I could even imagine. I think I made $60,000. And this is coming from a mom that I was so broke. And I remember thinking damn, that's like a year's worth of income for somebody in Utah. I made that. And then I kept doing it. And now, yesterday, I closed on, I don't know what number house it is. I have no idea. But this house, I made multiple six figures off of this house. And I kept doing the same thing. And what it came down to is even though I was terrified, I kept telling myself, just keep doing it. Just be brave enough to show up. Even though, my scarcity mind and maybe all these naysayers in my life were saying no, but I knew that the story was that I wasn't going to be financially independent. And I just kept rebelling against that story of mine. I almost just I fought against my own story. So even though it wasn't an overnight thing, I just kept showing up. I just kept being brave until now I can sit here and be like, that story is invalid. And the other day it was cool. I sat down and signed and I didn't have a lot of emotion attached to the money when I used to have so much emotion attached to money. And I just signed. It was like, cool, that's what I made. It's going to the bank. It'll be reinvested, moving on. But looking back and thinking that like I had so much conviction around the fact that I wasn't ever going to be able to be financially independent because all odds were against me. At least that's what I thought for so long. And, you know, it's interesting now. I'll drive by Czech City and I'm like, damn, like,
you're like, shit, do I still owe those guys money?
I'm like, they almost took my soul. No, but like, it was such a time. It was such a desperate time of my life. And I chose myself. I chose to go all in on, I risked it all. I didn't care, like, to flip that house. Like, I had $60,000 and I gutted a house and I just dumped it in and worked my ass off. And I knew that story wasn't going to serve me. So I had to continue to just rebel against that story that to the core, I was conditioned to believe that I wasn't going to live or have a good relationship with money.
So here's what's interesting about that. You said something that I disagree with a little bit, but I think when I say what you said that the story became invalid. See, the story is valid. In my opinion, the story is real. And the story will always be real. It'll always be there. You'll always have the story. You just get to rewrite it.
Yeah.
It's like this idea that people have that somehow one day you're going to forget all of the pain, or you're going to forget the memories, or the darkness will never be there, or somehow, some way, all of these terrible traumatic experiences that I've had will just be gone. And I don't believe that's true. I mean, our minds are the greatest supercomputers. The beauty of having a computer or this phone, I can take this phone right now and push a couple buttons and wipe everything out. Like reset the whole fucking thing. I can take every phone number.
All the humans were so simple.
Every picture. I can take everything on this phone and literally push a couple buttons and reset it and wipe out all of it, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about the human mind, we can't do that.
Right.
And this is something I think is really, really, really powerful and important for people to understand. Coming from two people that have a lot of fucking stories and a lot of darkness and a lot of trials and a lot of tribulations, it's really easy to look at it now and go, oh, well, life is so easy, or it's good, or you guys got this dope little freaking podcast set up and you fucking making some money now and you bought a boat and it must be easy. Fuck no, dude.
It's not.
I went through a bankruptcy 12 years ago. And I will tell you that I have stories around money and around security and around losing. I wake up in today, like literally, as I still wake up in the middle of the night in like a sweat that I'm broke, that all my money's gone. I will wake up at 2 a.m. freaking out that somebody just robbed me, that stole all my money, hacked all my shit. I will literally pick up my phone at 2 a.m. and get on my Chase app to look and see that I still have money in my account because I have so many stories around that shit. And so I want people to understand, I want you guys to understand that like those things aren't going to disappear. They're not going to go away. But what's dope, what you said, which I think is crazy powerful, is like rewriting it. When you face something and you see it and it's right there in front of you, you have an option. And I think this is really important, like when we transition into the relationship, is you and I are rewriting stories every day.
Yeah.
Because there's new shit coming up in our relationship as we open up new doors, as we experience new shit. It's like, oh, here's another story. Here's another story. And here's another story. And that story might be an addiction. That story might be something that you have told yourself that story in a lot of cases might not even be fucking real. But we sold ourselves that it's real. I think most of the
time they're not real.
We've told ourselves that's real. We've literally conditioned ourselves to believe that this is real, and in a lot of cases it's not. But what I really truly believe is as we face these things, as you experience them, what you said is powerful. You just chose to be brave in here's this deal, here's this reality. I'm going to continue to move forward, which is dope. You have the same experience now where you say, my lover just shared this with me and the story is this, or I just saw something on social media and the story is this, right? Like I having been in a relationship where there was a lot of lying and there was a lot of deception, there are a lot of things that come up that would have me believe a story like this is how you're going to respond.
Right.
I've shared the story about, the racetrack and how, past relationship that I was in, like it was just social media was contentious and chaos, and it was always just an issue.
Yeah.
And how my story was that I was never going to have someone appreciate who I was and the growth that I'm going through and the tribe that I'm building. The
emotionally mature.
The business that I'm building. Like, if any girl likes my picture, you're going to flip your shit and say, well, who's this? And how do you know her? Have you slept with her? Blah, 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 blah. Because that's truly what I'd been used to. That was the story was, I can't grow my social influence, if you will, my social circle, because the more I do that, the more contention there's going to be. And I have had numerous experiences with you that have literally rewritten the story for me. Now, two things happen that I think I want you to talk about this too. Yeah. Number one, you obviously show up different in helping me rewrite the story, right? Guys, hear this. Like, whether you're single, you're dating, or you're divorced and dating, or whether you're married and trying to make your marriage work, or you've been married for a while, like your growth and your significant other's growth is very, very, very important. Yeah. Because as you grow, you're going to rewrite your own stories. But as I rewrite my stories, I'm also going to be showing you something different.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention. When the racetrack, I look at it like, when you finally get to do, you practice dance and you practice your choreography and then you finally get to perform. Right. It's kind of the same thing as like, that was a moment in real life. It's like, okay, you think you're ready? Here.
Right.
And I was like, you get this. And it was beautiful as it comes down to choice. Like, I had a choice to go this way or this way. And knowing that I've been talking all this talk that I'm going to go this way every time. And then when it presents itself, you're like, oh.
Well, yeah, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, last year as we were dating, you had chosen, hey, I'm all in and I'm not going to date anybody else. And I wasn't there quite yet.
Yeah.
And I hadn't chosen to be all in and to not be seeing other people and other stuff like that. And the long and the short of it is that someone had reached out to Saxony, sent her screenshots of messages and different things like that that were triggering, that were, from another woman and so on and so forth. Yeah. And your response was you hit me up and said, hey, so-and-so just sent me all these messages, blah, 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 blah. And that was like the story.
None of my business.
The experience that I think this shines a light on for a lot of people is massive, because you had a chance to rewrite the story, which was, this guy's a dick, da-da-da-da, he's a liar, he's a piece of shit, whatever. And the truth was we had never had those conversations. And you said that to me. You're like, we never had these conversations. This is where we are. This is what's really going on.
But another part of that is me getting to face something uncomfortable that could have very, very easily hurt my self-worth or how because it's very easy to feel inadequate or devalued when there's another, especially when we're talking about sex and intimacy, like there's this other woman in this space. I got to model the fact that, like, I live very wholeheartedly. Like, that I stayed in my space knowing that I was completely good. That came at me, and, like, that didn't change how I felt about myself. That didn't change how I felt about you. That didn't change how I felt about any of it. It was really, really, really beautiful because I got to just hold this space for myself, being like, you're good, girl. Like, this came in, but, like, this has nothing to do with you. And that's why when I came to you and said, this is none of my business, it was incredibly powerful for me, because I get to completely detach from all this chaos that was trying to come, when it's so addicted. So many people are addicted to, they're like, oh, it's coming. Now I get to fight. And I was just like, oh, no, like, no, you're not coming in and you're not going to ruffle these feathers. Like, you're not going to. This is good. Yeah. Then the beautiful part was I gave it to you, and I said, "Here, this is none of my business." And then you got to see this almost like calmness, this maturity that is truly a beautiful space it's a beautiful space and a beautiful thing to have with another human being.
Right. Well, two things happened. Number one, you showed up differently to help me rewrite the story. Yeah. And so I want people to understand that. Like, as you see someone showing up differently, especially your lover, especially your significant other, if they're doing work on themselves and your preconceived notion is they're going to do this, they're going to say this. The story is like, this is how you've always been, so on and so forth. Like, you're staying addicted to a story and a pattern that you're literally not allowing to change. Now, by you showing up differently, like, okay, this is not normal for me. The story is, this is how it's going to go. Some girl sends you messages, you're going to come at me, we're going to war, you're going to call me a piece of shit, da-da-da-da. This is how it goes. That didn't happen. So then it was like, the second phase of that was now me having to rewrite the story. Because literally the second I got those messages, it was like, yep, here we go. Literally, I know exactly what's going to happen. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. She's going to say this. This is how this is going to turn out. Because that's what I had been conditioned to. That was the story that I believed. And so what's really fascinating about it to me is as you start, especially with you showing up differently than what I have ever experienced. There's something really, really, really cool about that, not only from a dating perspective and being newlyweds, which is really cool, but people that have been married for an extended period of time, I think this might be difficult because you get conditioned into patterns, you get conditioned into rituals, you get conditioned into expectations. And what needs to happen, in my opinion, in this is, number one, you need to be leveling up. Number two, your significant other needs to be leveling up. But the real important truth to this is you have to fucking believe it. And this was really hard for me because you showed up differently. And I called all the stories like, she is full of shit. Sean, you've been lied to. Sean, you've been cheated on. She is full of shit. And so my story was like, nope, don't trust, don't believe. And I noticed through that experience, like I was holding myself hostage, if you will, in some of these stories. And again, just as I've got literally dozens and dozens and dozens of these experiences that have happened with you specifically that have helped me rewrite it. But guys, you have to understand that so long as you hold someone to something, that's how it's always going to be. Like, you're going to have to literally rewrite the story. If you're dating right now and you've had your heart broken and you've been lied to and cheated on, and every dude has fucked you over and every chick has lied to you, whatever, like, if that is your story and you show up with that story to every person that you meet, guess what? You're going to find that exact same fucking reality. But what's really insane is, what if you're dating somebody and they show up differently, but you still wrap them into that same reality because you're addicted to the story? You're so hung up on your own shit. You're so hung up. I was so hung up on my social media game and where I was and what was going on that my story was, here's exactly how you're going to handle this. And you handled it differently. Now, it was on me to rewrite the story and say, you're not my ex. You're not the situation that I've happened. You're not the experience that I've had. And rewriting that complete new story, complete new book. And so as you guys are experiencing this, one of the things that I don't want to say caution you on, but hope that you see is that you and you alone are holding yourself hostage to these stories, right? It's not on you to rewrite them. You're just part of the vehicle of getting me to a different place, because as you show up differently, I then have a choice. Stay addicted to the story, or you've shown me something new. This is new. Let's rewrite this for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you saw that you flipped the house. You're like, oh shit. I went from like no money to 60 grand. Okay. The story is now I can do this. Still facing resistance, I mean, all of that. For me, I made millions of dollars. I lost millions of dollars. Like, as I make millions of dollars again, the story is, oh shit, I can continue to do this, and I can continue to write a new narrative that it doesn't go backwards, that the market, whether it does or doesn't crash, is that I've learned the lesson and I'm writing something new. I've had this experience with social media. You show up and there's no drama there. Well, I get a choice. Like, okay, this is new. I can build an empire around me, around what I'm doing, and not have it be addicted to or connected to some sort of story. I think it's really important for people to understand that, because it's, especially fellas, like, because that's really hard for me. Like, we get, believe it or not, like, we're as emotional as chicks are, probably even more emotional.
Yeah, definitely.
We just don't talk about it, don't share it as much. But like, There's a lot of fucking stories that I have found myself selling myself and committing myself to, even in the face of something different, something or someone showing up and showing me something different. I'm the one that fucking sabotages it. I'm the one that stays addicted to the story. I see all the Nike ads and all of the freaking ads for the Jordans and the whole thing, but I'm the one literally keeping myself from enjoying this experience of buying these shoes simply because I don't want to write something new or I'm addicted to something of the past.
And these patterns come up and these conditions come up. The ego, I've mentioned this in another podcast, but the ego, its main job is to keep us safe. So these stories are put in place to keep us very cautioned in life. So it's like to keep us very cautioned in life. Like the ego wants to protect us. So it's like, oh, don't do that because that's too big of a risk, or don't do this. And so this is like in the Untethered Soul, and there's many books that mention it. It's like learning to become best friends with your ego and knowing that like these patterns, like just understand that they were created to truly protect you at some point in life. Mm-hmm. That's why the conditioning works. That's why the mind is so easily conditioned. It's like self-preservation tactics from the ego. A big one of mine was I truly felt like I was broken. I felt like I was damaged, where no one could truly love me for who I was. And I tell this story. I've told this story many, many times. I actually started writing my book about this, and my book turned into a whole nother book. Weird. I'm like the first person that's happened to. Yeah, right. But it was, I truly felt like I was unlovable for who I really, really was. And because most people see, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, is they see this beautiful, bubbly side to most of us, right? We have this happy, joyful, childlike, easygoing, but then there's this other side, and that's where our shame lives. It's like our darkness, our dark side. But in society, we're trying so hard to stay in this, don't be depressed, drink energy drinks, stay in this space of just like good. Like, God forbid you have any of these other emotions that you were born with. Like, we're born with all these emotions, but we're only supposed to be happy. And this robs us from being seen for who we truly are. And I was completely bought in. And you really held space and helped me rewrite a story of when I just was upset. I was in a sad, sad place. And when this had happened before in relationships, people bailed. And given, like, it's pretty simple. It was like, I was just sad. Like I'll go into some serious sadness for like a day.
Yeah, I know.
And, and I used to be very, very, very ashamed of it, because I love when I'm happy. I love when I'm bubbly. I love the vibe that I put off and the connection I have in that space. But I do have this other side to me, and I was so ashamed of it. I just felt like there was something wrong with me, and I didn't know. I didn't know why I was that way, and I never found another like human connection that was safe to show, right? And you held space for me. And it was really interesting, because it was just like, okay, you're good. Like, go do your thing. You didn't judge me. There was no, why are you doing this? Will you get back to the way I like you, because it makes me feel better, and make it about you, because that was what I was used to. It was like, oh, I don't like this. Will you get back, because you're making me uncomfortable. Go back to the other way. And that makes you feel very conditionally loved. And you can relate to this. Like, we're very, very similar. And that was a huge story for me. And then, fast forward, proposing to me. It was like, I truly never felt like I was going to be chosen. And I would sit, like, I told my girlfriend this yesterday. I remember sitting on the stairs of my house, and I was just so discouraged by dating. I just thought, I just don't think that I'm meant to be with anyone. I don't think that I'm ever going to get remarried again. And honestly, like, maybe my job is just to be a teacher. Like, maybe I'm just here to, like,
be the cat lady.
No, I don't like cats. Plant lady. But, like, I thought maybe God put me on this earth to be a teacher, like, help. I didn't know. I literally did not think that this would ever be. It was just a really, really, really dark time of transition for me. But what was beautiful is that even though that came up, I still kept putting myself out there. And then, I got to that moment where I allowed you to see me in that, and that story was rewritten. And now it's beautiful because it's like, I don't believe anybody's broken. I'm not broken.
No one is broken.
You're not broken.
No
one is broken. It's that we are so conditioned, especially by our society, to be fucking happy and pretty and put together all the time. And that's not real. And it's robbing us of our true, authentic selves. It's robbing us of so much. And to rebel against that now that I see clearer, like, I encourage everyone to, like, show yourself. Truly let yourself be seen. Because you might be surprised.
That's a story that a lot of people will share. So talk about that for a minute. Because, like, I hear this all the time. You hear this all the time. Like, if I show myself, if I'm seen, it's going to hurt. I will be hurt. I will be lied to. I will be let down. I will be all of these things. Yeah. And the possibility is that was real for you. That really happened, right? You were let down. You were lied to. You were deceived. You were whatever. You've experienced that. I've experienced. So there's a lot of truth to this and to these stories. Like, not all of them are fictitious and made up in our mind. A lot of them are very, very real, very emotional.
It's
We're
just
still connected
we attached
to them.
our value to the story.
Yeah, I connected myself to this story about the shoes and the Jordans, and if I was gonna, like, give my heart to a woman, she was gonna, break me and crush me in this whole thing. So, but talk about that for a second, because there are a lot of people, and I know you talk about this all the time, women specifically, who say being open and being vulnerable or being their true authentic self, they, number one, can't because of whatever, which I think is a total lie and a total story. But how talk about that for a second.
Well, I think a lot of people are walking around, and they're like maybe operating at 70% capacity. There's this 30% that they just don't go. If the conversation comes up, they just don't have it. If they're given the opportunity to be seen, they just won't show up. And you can see this in a lot of relationships. So those people, like the 70%ers or whatever, they match up because they're never going to want to push and see the other 30% because they don't want to show their other 30%. And that happens, and that's why we have a lot of disconnection in intimate relationships. We have a lot of disconnection in families. We have a lot of disconnection because it's like truly showing up and being like, hey, this is who I am. Like telling our stories. Like, I was bulimic for 17 years. Most people are like, oh my God, why would you talk about that? And it's like, I don't have any shame around it. If anything, I want to share that because I want to help someone else. If that helps someone else, then it was worth it all. It was worth everything that I went through to be where I am today. And it's like the power of vulnerability it's incredible. It's like what we talked about last week, like being naked. You can't truly connect with another soul when you are disconnected with yourself. You cannot. You can pretend it. But God, like if you even knew how delicious that space is to be so open and so seen for all of your darkness, because your darkness is where the light comes in. Your darkness is this, I was talking to my son about it. It's like this uncharted territory. It's a mystery land and it's beautiful. If you think about it, like I get to go into this space of darkness in myself and get curious as to what's in there and why is it in there, instead of being like, I don't want to look at it. I'm a huge advocate for inner child healing, and that's it. It's like getting in and being like, getting curious of like, why am I this way? Where did this come from? What is the root of this? Get in and almost like untangle the knots and detach from these stories. But if you don't ever get naked, if you don't ever get so open and to truly be seen and let another human see you, like you're always going to have these secrets, right? Or this like,
stories.
These stories that, and some of them are subconscious stories. You don't even know they're there, and you find them, especially if you work with plant medicine. You're like, hello, here's all this stuff that you didn't know existed. But it's so incredible to find that connection. The connection yourself becomes through the roof. And then the way you can connect with other souls, like it becomes pure and like it's like having that close to God feeling. Like when you're like, there's like a collective energy and we're not so separate and we're not broken. We're all operating in this and with these same things, but we're all pretending like we don't have them. And when you can see yours and you can honor your darkness and honor your stories and get curious about them and rewrite them, like you start to see others with so much empathy and compassion, and then your light shines brighter, which then there's other people that are like, oh my God, well, if she can do it, or if he can do it, or if they can have these conversations, like maybe I can too. And it spreads, and it's like, it's delicious. That's the word I just keeps coming to my mind. It's just, it's so good.
Juicy now.
It's juicy, delicious.
One thing that I think is extremely important to note is that the act of me buying the shoes was an action. Mm-hmm. The action or the act of you and I communicating when there was a level of intensity was an action. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things we obviously know this, like action it heals, it educates. Yeah. It's the simplest, most profound thing that any of us can do to completely change our reality. Whether you're fat and you want to get in shape, act. Get your ass on the treadmill. You're broke,
make a choice.
Act, right? Act. You have disconnection, move and then connect, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the thing is, I've thought about this, the action is literally what's rewriting these things, is literally doing something different. Doing something different. Like on that the racetrack experience, like when you said to me in this text message after getting these messages, like, this has nothing to do with me. Like my mind was so wrapped up. Like, she is so full of shit right now. She's so full of shit.
This chick is so psycho. She's going to come at me later, secretly.
Look, it's 5 minutes. I give her 10 minutes. She's going to lose her fucking mind. She's going to come unglued. And in that moment, I realized I have a choice. Like, I have to literally act differently. And acting differently and doing something differently is how you program yourself. Sure. A lot of people think, oh, well, I'm naturally just going to get ripped in my mind. Well, if you're ripped in your mind, you're going to act. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're truly wanting to condition your body differently, your proof in that will be your action. Mm-hmm. And so I think what's really interesting, what you're saying, is like when people get into these places, you can say, well, I want to rewrite the story and I want to do these things differently. And I want to love, and I want to be vulnerable, and I want to be open, and I want to buy the shoes, and I want to become wealthy, and I want to be ripped. But the reality is, the way you will prove out that model and the way that you will rewrite the stories is by fucking acting. Yeah. Literally doing something physically, not just, I'm gonna rub some crystals together. I'm gonna pray to the fucking moon, and I'm gonna manifest.
That stuff works too big.
But you know what? I'm gonna manifest abs. No, motherfucker, you need to stop eating sugar and fucking work out, right? You can manifest all you want, but you have to actually do something in order to build some abs. Yeah. You have to actually do something different to change your relationship. You physically have to do something different. Right. To rewrite these stories. Sure. And I physically had to push the buttons on the cell phone, buy the shoes, open the shoes, see them, hold them. The action of literally holding this purchase to rewrite the story. I had to literally choose in that moment, don't play small, believe her words, don't be a fucking pussy and lash out or play small or shut off or clam up like I would have, because I don't believe you, so I'll just brush this one under the rug and we'll just fucking call it a day and see what happens tomorrow, kind of a thing. No, I was like, dude, I am literally going to choose a different action right now. And you mentioned this earlier, like with the house and with money, you do these things. And not only, number one, is that how you rewrite the story, that specific story, but I have found, and you have found, that it becomes easier to rewrite every story. Yeah. As you do this. It's just like lifting weights, man. 45 pounds, and I break it down to the simplest denomination every single time, my friends. You guys know that. I love simple shit. Draw it on the whiteboard, show it to me in crayons and we'll call it a day. But 45 pounds will always be 45 pounds. It doesn't get lighter. Weight doesn't get lighter. You get stronger. And so if you're in a place where your stories have just consumed you, the scarcity, the fear, the inability to be naked, the inability to open, the inability to trust, the inability to love, the inability to act, the inability to earn, right? Like when you really stop and think about that, like it will boil down to you moving, creating action, doing something different. And I promise you, the more you do it, the easier it gets.
I was just thinking about, like, a lot of people are stuck in stories with addiction. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about, I haven't really mentioned on the podcast about my bulimia recovery. You know, this is something that started as I was a child. I was 9 is my farthest back recollection of when my eating disorder started. And I have no idea where it came from. It came up probably from my parents' divorce. Who knows? It must have been chaos, but it was created. So you think about this, like, I lived the majority of my life with an eating disorder. I knew nothing else, but yet I knew that this was my thing. It wasn't anybody else's around me thing. So it had to have been, it's something that is attached to me, right? And as I got older, I had a lot of shame, a lot of chaos around it. But as I got to about my mid-20s to late 20s, I hit a wall with it. And that's when I realized that I have a choice. Like, this may be all I've ever known. Like, I didn't have a relationship with food other than having an eating disorder. I didn't know how to eat normal. I literally used to pray to God, I just want a normal life. I've told you this. Like, I just want to be a normal mom with a normal life and not this. And because there was so much emotional chaos in it. And I have a lot of empathy for people with addiction, but it too is a story because you've attached something to where you're trying to regulate some trauma or some nervous system, whatever it is, to this coping mechanism. And then one day I finally made a decision that I would rather die than continue in this chaos. And it was literally a hardcore line in the sand. I didn't have a therapist. I didn't have treatment, which I didn't know existed. But, you know, I made a decision. And then from that day forward, it was like I took no prisoner. Like, it didn't matter what happened. I was never, ever, ever going to go back on that decision. I just, with all my conviction, I became an absolute warrior that I was not going to exist anymore. And that's where it was like choice, action, forward. And it was a struggle, but I literally had to rewrite my entire relationship with food, my entire relationship with going out, social eating. What do I do? Like, how do I cook? And it was this talk about rewriting a story. Like, I didn't have it wasn't like a before that I could reference. It was like all I knew. And that was when I realized how powerful stories are, but also how powerful literally just owning it and taking action and not looking back. Because if you start to bargain with yourself too with these stories, like, well, you're fucked. Like, there's no bargaining. You just act and you move forward.
What do you say to people who are struggling right now with rewriting their stories? Like, what would you say would be something that people can start to focus on and pay attention to rewrite these stories?
What do you really want? Do you want your story? You want your story? You want to be right? You want your story? Or do you want what you really, really, really crave? What you know is there? Like, because you see it, like, oh, they have such a beautiful relationship. Oh, it's just them. Like, it's obviously attainable. Do you want to believe that it's not attainable for you because of your story? Or do you want to believe that what it is that you wish and desire in life is actually attainable? And you just have to decide which one you want more.
Yeah. I think as you guys experience this, and again, we're just sharing our 2 cents from our position and where we've been, like, you know, I'm rewriting stories every day.
Every day.
I'm rewriting them every single day. And it's like we talk about, you peel back the layers and we're like onions, and this layer, and then this layer, and then this layer, and then this layer. It's like a never-ending layer, right? I'm evolving and growing, and that presents itself with a new set of challenges, a new set of stories. And oh shit, like you said, stuff that you didn't even know was there, all of a sudden pops up and is here and it's there, and all this other stuff. I think that understanding, number one, that they exist and that they're real and that you are in complete control of them is really, really, really important, because it's very simple to say, I am the way that I am. Like, I never had the Jordans because my parents never bought them for me, right? I had the opportunity to, right? You can say that I'm never going to find love. I'm never going to be chosen, right? Because of such and such and such and such. But the truth is, like, getting yourself to a place, again, through action where you can become vulnerable, especially in relationship. Like, the story is this. The story is that. Like, you literally have the ability to rewrite anything and everything that you want. It's a choice. It truly, truly, 100%. Truly is a choice. You may, again, you may have had just the most terrible experience. You may have been hurt and just gone through insane amounts of trauma. But the truth is that you can rewrite that story, and it's 100% your choice. And Absolutely. It literally will boil down to you literally, it's so simple, yet so fucking hard, rewriting it. Literally looking, like, I look at you all the time when stories come into my brain, and I'm literally having a conversation in my head going, okay, this is what you've known. This is where you've been. She's showing you something different. You have two choices right here, right now. Run the story, run the racket, stay in the same mindset of small, or believe her. Choose something completely different. Rewrite that this is someone that I can do this with, or that with, or grow here, or grow there. But I think that it's just fascinating to me. The more we have this conversation, number one, how much I learned about myself in stories, but how powerful they really, really, really are. And I know that we talk about it on the podcast, kind of, this is a serious conversation. It's a serious topic, and it's very real for a lot of you listening, and we might kind of joke about it or laugh about it in a way, but at the same time, we realize how fucking powerful this really is and how difficult it really is, but that at the same time, like, literally taking what we've done and trying it on, applying it however you want to apply it, and seeing how it works. Like, literally looking at your lover, having these experiences, whatever it is, I can't take that vacation because of, I can't do this because of, the story is, if I do this, and this, taking those things and literally creating action around them, doing something different. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I just literally rewrote that. I literally bought these shoes, rewrote the entire story. I still have the story. It's still real. But then I have the story in the shoes. Yeah. Like, me trusting you. She's telling me the truth. She's not going to lose her shit. This is going to be a completely new reality. Well, then 20 minutes later, oh, okay, it is a completely new reality. How many more of these stories can I continue to experience and evolve and work through? But I think it's a very, very, very real thing, and it's super powerful. And I think, like, it sounds kind of weird in a way, but I'm grateful for the stories, because
Absolutely.
You get to rewrite them, and when you rewrite shit, it's kind of like you feel victorious. You really do.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
You're
that.
Like,
you feel like
I did that.
I did that.
I did that. I did that. Yeah, I did that. Right? You sent me the text message, and I had to show you. I did that shit. Well, how do you win? You pile wins upon wins, right?
Absolutely.
You want to keep winning, get a small win. You want to win big, win small first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't make it to the World Series in one game. You make it to the World Series in having a season of consistency, a season of winning. It might not be huge, massive wins, but in order to make it to the big dance, in order to make it to the big show, you have to have a lot of freaking small wins there. In order for you and I to be what we believe we can be, want to be, a dream, hope we can be, it comes at a lot of small little victories, a lot of small stories being rewritten every single day. So,
Absolutely.
Anything else, babe? Anything else you want to say on that?
I sure love you. I'm proud of you.
Thanks. I'm proud of me too.
I told you that this morning when we woke up. I'm like, I'm just proud of you.
Thanks, babe.
How far you've come in your glow up.
Glow up.
Jocelyn,
we love you. We had a friend send me a message that I didn't know what glow up meant. And it was kind of like growing
Apparently,
up.
Sean has glowed up.
I've glowed up. I'm glowing up.
You're glowing
since
up.
I've met you and married you and am hanging out with you every day. It's a good thing.
Aww.
All right, guys, we love you. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, one final thing really quick. If you got value from this, please share it. That's our only ask. Please share it. Please leave a comment wherever you're. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment, share it. If you're on iTunes or Spotify or any of these other platforms, it means the world to us not only to hear from you guys, but also to support the podcast and push us out there a little bit further. And so please leave us a review. Please leave us a comment. And please share the podcast.
We sure love you guys.
Love you guys. See you next week.
Bye.